We hope you enjoyed our last episode as we talk about TikTok, the Supreme Court upholding that decision to have that ban. By the time you're hearing this, it's probably still on, and maybe they'll figure out a way, particularly for my 12-year-old, that it'll stay on next week. We also do a show called Bite by Bite BBB, which is a show specific to the Heart of Alabama Food Bank, a wonderful organization that carries 35 counties in the great state of Alabama, and of course also helps Feeding America. You've always been Michael Coleman, who's the CEO of this wonderful organization, has always been very outreaching. He's always looking for new ideas. He's always willing to sit down and listen to someone's ideas if it makes it better to be around that person. And I know that recently you had a bunch of CEOs of all kinds of food pantries, Feeding America, and the Heart of Alabama Food Bank to sit down and some different ideas. But one of the things you guys talked about was the recent election. We've actually done several shows on this. What does the new election and the new president, the fact that we're changing parties again, mean to Feeding America, particularly with the Farmer Bill 2 coming out? What did you guys decide on?
Well, I wasn't involved in this particular one, but I've got there was an article written about it that I found was very interesting, and I know some of the CEOs personally who were involved in this. I will tell you, when anytime because when Trump was coming in and he right away talked about cuts and the need for cuts and the bloated agencies and all that, then right away in food sourcing and USDA and the food and the dollars we get to help support the network, the Feeding America network, and just food banking in general. There's a lot of hand wringing, and I get that because if you cut SNAP, yes, there's waste in SNAP. There's going to be in government. We've talked about that on previous shows. But the reality is, if you cut that, anybody's funds that are cut are going to seek help, and they're going to seek help through the Feeding America or Food Bank Network. So we're anticipating some of that. Of course, we don't really know where that's going to all land. I don't know what Trump's personal view is on the farm bill or what he's going to advocate for and what he's not going to advocate for. So a lot of this is just projection and what people think. But you had some traditional things like, yeah, what does that mean? But I really thought some insightful things came from other CEOs about it. Like, okay, if this is the reality, regardless if it's more or less or whatever, what how should we look at this? And the CEO of Feeding Tampa Bay, which is a very large food bank, and they do a lot of great work. He said, it's really important that we start talking about this in a little bit different way, a couple of different ways. One is we need to be able to communicate and help government understand that this is not, yes, we rely on donor dollars. Mm-hmm. But these are societal problems that can't be fixed through philanthropy. There's just not enough money, and there's not enough systems in place through philanthropic giving. Now we desperately need philanthropic giving. That's very important. But we need to talk about some of these issues like food banking and how government needs to be involved. I'm not talking about necessarily increasing. I'm just talking about as a structure, because if you think about HUD, for instance, housing and urban development. At some point when they instituted HUD, it was because the issue of housing and making sure Americans, especially poor Americans, could obtain housing in different places. Then it got to the point where, hey, we need to do this at a cabinet level. And I'm not saying at all that food banking necessarily needs to be a cabinet level, but the idea is we can't just, if we did away with HUD and we didn't supplement, there would be a lot more people who would truly be homeless. Yeah. If we didn't have some of the programs and some of the incentives and some of the things that come through housing and urban development. Again, I'm sure there's lots of things that could be refocused, and that's true of every department. But I just thought it was interesting that we need to help people understand that feeding is such a basic need, and it's so complex and it's so big, and it requires great collaboration between farmers, manufacturers, food banking network, all the partners that come together. And so I just thought that was a very insightful comment. And to also, he added, we need to get out of, that would help us get out of the skies falling. And that's one of the things I've always hated. So, for instance, you will have you can send newsletters out, or or send appeals out for people to donate. And lots of times it's the kid with the sad face, and you like, and it's lots of times a kid, a person of color, and he's not doesn't have enough to eat, and it's meant to, pull on the heartstrings. Oh, I need to help out my community. I really wish we could look at it from a little bit more positive standpoint, in the fact that, these kids who aren't getting enough to eat, they are our next leaders. They're our next mayor, our next congressman, our next doctor, lawyer, our next leader, military leader. And, they're in an environment where they need support, but let's help them become what they are going to become to help this world. It's not just, let's just give this poor kid so he can survive. It's hey, this kid has a great barrier in his path to becoming what we believe God created him to be. So let's create a structure by which that doesn't happen to anybody, where nobody's held back over the issue of food. They don't have enough food for learning. They don't have enough food for for proper growth, mentally and physically, emotionally, all those kind of things. And the last thing I'll touch on real quick is, there's a lot of fear in the immigration community right now. So we have a huge agricultural presence. I have a friend who owns a Hispanic radio station. Um, and more, so as the immigration community, as the immigrant community, I should say, um, some of those are going to be illegal, some of those are legal, and I get the issue of illegal immigration, but my thoughts have always been, my job is to feed people. And if somebody shows up hungry, I'm not asking whether you're legal or illegal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that's not an important issue. I'm not saying that immigration it's a really important issue. But when somebody is hungry, especially with children standing right in front of me, I'm going to feed them. Um, so the question though is, if you believe in a secure border, which I think most of us do, um, the people who are here working or have, it may further scare the immigrant community, and it's one more barrier that keeps them from coming out and getting assistance when they need it, because they may think the food banks are here to help government aids, like, oh, I'll get you here, I'll feed you, but I'm also going to report you if I
Yeah.
suspect that you're
Yeah.
illegal. So that's not our role. So when a new administration comes in, tent people, and this is true of both sides. If it's, if a Republican's coming in, then the Democrats are going to tend to kind of say the sky's going to fall. And if you're progressive and you're in food banking, you're going to filter that through the most negative outcome. Now, it's what people are saying true. Yes. Is it guaranteed it's going to happen that way? Absolutely not. We don't know how this is going to play out, because you could have you could have extremes on either side, and it all tends. It could be a little left, a little right, but it's going to be, because of Congress and all that. It's going to end up tending to be pretty close to the center. We're going to get a farm bill passed. It's going to be probably a little bit of increase in USDA and SNAP and all the other things, is my guess right now. But it was just interesting to see that something like a president coming in, we've already seen the effect around the world it's had
Mm-hmm.
on foreign policy, and people paying attention, and some of the conversations that are going on, and people are taking Trump way more seriously than they did in the past.
No, sure. That's very, very, very
But
true.
but in terms of things like just feeding people, uh, a new administration has a really big deal, and it's got a lot of people upset, some feeling more positive. And I will tell you this, and I'll close with this. So the Midwest Food Bank is not part of the Feeding America system, and it's one of the largest food banks in the nation. And they help out other states as well. But anyway, most of their funds are private funds. They get very little government funds. So whether the USDA continues to support food banking or not doesn't really matter to them, because I think that most of their funding is private. So in that case, they're very excited about Trump coming in, because they think the economy is going to be better. They think inflation is going to get under control. So they think that's going to affect their bottom line, that there's going to be more money to donate. And then to be able
There
to
you go.
help more
Yeah.
people. And the average person is going to have lower costs. They may not need as much food bank support. So again, it's just interesting the dynamic that we're living in right now and all the things that are going into considering whether or how an administration is going to affect our bottom line.
Time will tell. Buy
Yeah.
Heart of Alabama Food Bank, HAAB. Check that out.
HAFB.
I don't know why I always can't get that right. HAFB Food Bank. I'm thinking it's on
HAFB.org.
my head. I'm having a senior moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, check it out. Hashtag that, and make sure you check out Heart of Alabama Food Bank, and they do wonderful work. Michael, thank you so much. We'll catch up next week, man.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.